Hello everyone and welcome back to Why the Hell Do We Care, or With the Wick for short. Today it's all samurai warriors all the time, so let's get started with Magoichi. Magoichi was one of the original samurai warriors, and it is unknown when he was born due to the fact that we don't know which Magoichi Saika he is. His name is actually a title used by the leader of the Saika mercenaries, and there are three possible people he could be. Our Magoichi is a man who loves his freedom and his women. In the original game, Magoichi first served the Ikko monks who were fighting against Nobunaga Oda. Nobunaga's merciless slaughter of the monks drove Magoichi to fight against Nobunaga whenever he could, and even attempts to assassinate the man on several occasions. In later installments, his friendship with Hideyoshi, Motochika, and Masamune are focused on. He tends to be a light-hearted character that is constantly flirting with the female members of the team. However, when people start dying, he is quick to rush to their aid. Now let's see how the leader of the Saika mercenaries wields a musket. Magoichi is a wonder type, and unfortunately when it comes to fighting, the leader of the Saika mercenaries is actually pretty bad here. His S-string is a lot faster than it used to be, but the gunshots at the end hit pretty narrow, so it's easy for him to get ganged up on. Thankfully, his C1 now activates his weapon passive on most of the hits instead of just at the end now. His C2 is an okay officer killer, and his C3 is just kinda there. His C4 would be nice if it didn't take so long to fully charge. His C5 is okay, but doesn't really help his crowd control problems. His R1 is some much needed crowd control as he rains fire down on the field, and his aerial is naturally him raining bullets down on his enemies. His Musou is pretty average, pretty much a string of shotgun blasts as he moves forward. His passive is Wonder, which boosts stats of all Wonder characters. Magoichi has a lot of problems. He lacks any good way to handle groups, and his most damaging attack has him stand still for a good second or two before firing. He has come a long way from being the absolute bottom of the barrel he shared with Goemon, but the man is far from top tier now. Keiji was born in 1543 AD, and was the original samurai warrior's Lubu. He is mainly depicted as a wandering warrior who is always looking for a good fight, so his loyalties shift a lot. Historically, he really loved the arts and wrote poetry and painted in his spare time. In the games, he usually serves the Oda and Toyotomi for a while, and then goes off and joins random groups until finally settling with the Uesugi clan. One of his more famous and romanticized acts is protecting the Uesugi's retreat from Hasedo, usually alone and surviving. He is also known as a Kabuki Mono, or wild man, and no, the fact that Kabuki is in the word is not a coincidence. His wild hair and face makeup is a reference to Kabuki theater. Personality-wise, he is a fun-loving brawler who thinks of his battles as giant crazy parties, so let's see how he really cuts loose. Keiji is naturally a power type. His S-string is pretty fast, has good range, and ends with a ground explosion for extra murder. In all honesty, to me, his charge attacks are fairly interchangeable. Beyond the fact that his C2 is a juggler and the first hit of his C3 stuns, a lot of them are just wide-hitting beatdowns that murder everything in the area. And there are worse things that could be said about a guy's moveset. His C4 is probably my favorite since it hits all around him multiple times, so it handles large groups with ease. His C5 also launches his enemies in a shower of confetti, which earns style points. His R1s are again wide area beatdowns on either the ground or in the air. His Musou is a lot like Musashi's. Not the best range, but if an officer is caught in it, odds are he is already dead. His passive is Trinity, which fills part of the triple attack gauge every 100 KOs. Keiji is pretty much one of the strongest samurai warriors, and only got usurped from his position by Tadakatsu Honda in the sequels. Even if he isn't considered the best of the best in-universe anymore, he still curb stomps unfortunate officers that managed to get in his way with ease. Masamune Date was born in 1567 AD, and he was an original member of the cast. The Samurai Warriors version of Masamune frustrates me. Historically, he is an interesting character, and in other mediums he is usually pretty cool. Also, he actually wore that crazy helmet of his in real life. However, the Warriors version I mainly know is from the Warriors Orochi universe, and here he is an arrogant, petulant brat who is a fanatic for Orochi and calls everyone imbeciles. In the original Samurai Warriors game, he was kind of a joke character who did nothing but run into all the other major battles and indiscriminately fought anyone he laid eye on. I have seen people theorize that he is portrayed like this as a shot at the Sengoku Basara series, but there really isn't evidence to support that. Thankfully, with the introduction of Kojuro Sasaki in 4 and more focus on the tragedy in his life have made him a more sympathetic character. A lot of his issues stem from the fact that he had to shoot his father who had been taken hostage. After that, he let both his guilt and his pride rule him, causing his clan to spiral into failure. It takes Kojuro nearly sacrificing himself for him to realize how destructive his path was, and he finally puts his father's death behind him and becomes a leader. Now let's see how Masamune wields both guns and sword in battle. Masamune is a technique type and actually kicks ass in my opinion. The final hits on his S-string has Magoichi's issue of hitting in a poor area, but his charge attacks is what sets him apart. He has an interesting combo of both melee and range in his attacks. His C2 is his main officer killer with some good old aerial bullet juggling, and his C3 has pretty big hit area with the shockwaves at the end. His C4 is actually multi-purpose depending on whether you do the whole combo for dueling or shorten it for the crowd control part. His C5 also deals with groups with a pretty impressive bullet storm. His ground R1 is kinda weird with him diving forward while shooting and then doing his C4 finisher, and his aerial is a decent air combo. His Musou hits like a truck if you get an officer close enough to get hit by multiple bullets. His passive is Dexterity, which reduces enemy combo damage. Again, not sure how that compares to the straight damage reduction ones. While I may not like Masamune's character in Warriors Orochi, he kicks a lot of ass on the field, so in that realm he gets a recommendation. Well, that's it for today's episode and the last with the wick for Chapter 2. Since we now have the ability to go back in time before the good chunk of the cast got killed, we will finally be able to save them from the Hydra's initial assault. I hope you will all join me again as we try to rescue them all next time.